The views and opinions expressed in Media Litter Sandwich do not reflect on the views of the network, station, studio, website, sponsors, guests, hosts themselves, anyone or anything else associated or even not associated with this podcast. Maybe not even the person that said them. In other words, do your own research and do not sue anyone over what is said on this show.
I thought about new ways to intro the show. Hey, welcome to Media Litter Sandwich. We're back from hiatus, kinda, sort of. It hasn't even been a week for me, but I'm still recording, so I don't know how long you're waited. I'm sorry, but hey, maybe it'll be worth it. I don't know. I waited, 3-4 years to get one of my former students in here, so I guess that works. And by in here, I'm back at Foundation Hotel in their Foundation studio in downtown Detroit, overlooking or just looking down the street to the TCF Center, where I assume it already happened, but for me, YumaCon's going to start in a couple weeks, so we'll see what happens when I record that episode. That should be fun. All sorts of anime people, if you haven't heard of YumaCon before. We are still on DV Radio. Go ahead and check their schedule, see when we're playing. We used to play on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't know if we're still there, but you could check their schedule. I'm probably in the chat room, and it plays first on DV Radio. And then the following week, I go ahead and put up the podcast. So if you want to listen first, go check out DV Radio, and you'll see me in the chat room. And if you don't know nothing about DV Radio, just go dvradio.net. Check it out. The DV stands for Dysfunctional Veterans. And speaking of dysfunctional, I got a former student of mine who wrote a book.
Hey.
Hey, go ahead, Lenny. Introduce yourself. Tell me what's up.
Not too much. My name is Lenny Sherman.
Here, let's get you closer to the mic, man.
Hello. Testing. My name is Lenny Sherman. I'm a recent graduate from.
You don't have to say where. No, yeah,
no.
You're from Detroit. That's all anyone needs to know.
There we go.
Or at least in the Detroit area.
I'm learning. So not too much. Been doing all kinds of smaller projects, more on the writing end. I actually just self-published a couple of space fantasy action adventure books, 4 novellas and a novel, which I brought into the studio today. Our Last Nights on Earth, which you can buy on Amazon.
The video version is different than the audio version. We have a beautiful cover here, if you want it to hold up. If not, that's fine. If you want to watch me point and make fun of Lenny, go to the video version. So go ahead. Sorry I interrupted.
No, that's okay. It's very easy to make fun of me.
Oh, come on. You see my beard and all the gray in it.
That is true. That is very true. I don't know. You want to just jump into what the book's about, or?
Oh, well, I know. So you said you wrote a couple different books, and they're all sci-fi. And I know you've written and done some sci-fi shorts, and you've written scripts for sci-fi.
Yes.
I know I've read a couple of them, which I like because I'm a big fan of Highlander series, and I know you had a couple things that made me just think of Highlander, or I'm just obsessed. I haven't figured out which one yet. So how are you self-publishing is the main one, because I've talked to people that don't want to self-publish, and they go through a publisher, and then once that's over, they're like, well, I think I'm going to do like a 50-50 thing next time. Or people self-publish and they hate it and they go to a publisher next time, or they do it a million different ways. How are you self-publishing?
Essentially, I was looking into self-publishing. I'd been looking into it for a couple of years because my background started in writing before I decided to jump into film. And I just went online and I found this program through Amazon called Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP. And essentially I just thought, well, this must be just for the electronic books, like for Kindle. But what really attracted my eye was that they will actually publish your paperback, and there were no upfront costs, which is what I was really afraid of. I always heard that self-publishing involved you had to actually pay for your own prints, which you do if you want your own prints, but to just take your finished piece and print it out, put it on Amazon, there's no cost to you until you want an actual printed product, which I have with me here.
Right. And you also have a digital product for Amazon's digital versions.
Correct.
Too.
Right.
Okay.
And what's nice about that is because you don't have to print the electronic version of it, you get more profit in your pocket. It doesn't cost anything to print, so I actually make a little more off of the electronic version, even though I myself, I love having the physical copy. But I know a lot of people, for convenience for their phones or Kindles, like the electronic version, so that is on there too.
Yeah, and it's cheaper to buy a digital copy too, I believe.
It is, yeah. The electronic versions of all of them are $2.99, whereas the paperbacks range from $5 to $14, and that just goes by page count. Obviously, they have to print more, spend more on paper and ink. So,
absolutely,
yeah.
So you wanted a physical copy when you started.
Correct.
At what point? And I asked this because I had someone on the show that would write like 6 different novels and stuff at the same time. I don't know how you do that kind of stuff. Mr. Dave Kilborn was probably writing another musical and another movie and another book all at the same time. Dude's crazy nuts. I know what he would do is once he knows about the cover and he kind of knows what the size and dimensions of the book is, he'll go ahead and publish a copy for himself, even if it's only like the first chapter repeated throughout the whole thing. He'll do that just to kind of get a look and feel the book. How OCD, like for your first printed book, were you even thinking of anything like that?
No, to be honest, because I didn't know how it worked. This book was a book that I wrote in high school, and they all were books that I wrote from junior high through high school. And that's why I wanted to get into self-publishing, is because I wrote these at a very young age, before I had any experience. So, for example, this book is based very much on the Michael Bay and Roland Emmerich films of the 90s, which is very popular back in the 90s when I was growing up. And so that's where this book came from. And then the first 4, which are part of a series, the other 4, the novellas are very much inspired by Star Wars. You might even call them Star Wars knockoffs. And that was why I kind of held off on sending them to a traditional publisher. I figured they would be very hard to try and market and try to sell those to a publisher, because there's just so many books out there like that. It's science fiction is such not only a niche genre, but it's a very competitive genre. Everybody's writing science fiction, space fantasy, and that kind of thing. Yeah. The film industry in recent years is all about space fantasy, science fiction. So self-publishing allowed me to just put it out there, and anybody who wanted to read them could. And I think they're pretty affordable. But the very first one that I published, Galactic Redemption, I think back at the end of April or May, when I published it, I went back and edited it a little bit, but I really just wanted to see what that physical copy would look like. And I got it, and it was like 60 pages. It's very short. You know, you write a manuscript that's like 25 pages, 8 by 11 paper. You don't know what that really looks like in paperback. Right. So I got it, and I was like, wow, you could read this in an hour. But once I saw
Which isn't a bad thing, because you can determine marketing off of that too.
Yeah. But I opened it up, and you can choose the dimensions and things, but the dimensions, you know, it's going to change your cost on Amazon too, depending on the kind of paper, a matte cover versus a glossy cover. And I just felt for my first book, I didn't want to be pretentious. Let's just put that out in the open.
You just wanted the book.
Yeah. I just wanted a paper copy, and I went to work at the post office where I work full time, and there's a bunch of people there that read all the time. They always talk about, they'll be casing mail, and they always talk about the books they read. And I was like, well, I just published one, and one of my coworkers bought it like that day. She ordered it, and the next week she got it in the mail. She brought it in, and she asked me to autograph it, which I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But that was kind of almost a dream being fulfilled, just to have somebody. It felt pretentious as hell, but you know, it was really cool to hold that physical copy. And once I saw the dimensions, they're all about this size. The width and everything.
You weren't doing anything crazy with it, like, oh, it's only 25 pages. Maybe if I made it smaller, I could do a pocketbook. You know, nothing crazy or. Yeah,
they're very controlled. There's not a ton of options when you go with Amazon. You get, I think, like 3 different page types, paper types, and the covers. That's the one thing I don't like about it is I'm self-publishing. I'm not making enough, I can't sink hundreds of dollars to get a fancy cover that looks like a Star Wars poster, right? So they give you proprietary photos that you can use, which are, like this. It fits
honestly,
the theme of the book.
Truth be told, it doesn't cost much. I mean, you're in film, graphic artists. It doesn't cost much to get something commissioned, even if it's a friend doing you a favor, or you're actually commissioning a graphic artist to do something, or commissioning, or even a painter, or a photographer. Depending on what you want, the cost might not be as much as you want, as much as you think it's going to be, unless you really are doing like a really super in-depth live action photo shoot. That's insane crazy, and you're just paying for everything outright. And I mean like insane crazy. Like, I want a boat there. It's got to be a tall ship, and I want something crazy like that. I think you'd be surprised about how much actual prices are, because I know I've had a lot of paintings commissioned, and they don't cost as much as you think.
Yeah, and I did some research, and I actually know a couple of graphic artists, and they rightfully they make a living off of it. So
yeah.
It's always going to be relative. But I was looking at, okay, this is my first book. I even if they charge $200, $150 to do a cover, I realized, okay, let's see how it sells first, and if it starts selling, then maybe I can use the profits to And the thing was I published all 5 of these within like a month period, because I had them already. It was just a matter of going in, editing them, touching them up.
How do you got time for that? You got kids, man. You got a day job. How do you do that? Sleep? Yeah, right.
Anytime between midnight and 6 a.m.
Man.
Like I said,
few of those hours are the only time I get to sleep.
Yeah, it's time management. It goes back to, there's so many inspirational videos online of celebrities talking about how to inspire artists who want to be like them. Arnold Schwarzenegger recently, I listened to something he had to say about making time and how everybody is always like, I don't have time for this and I don't have time for that. When I was going to Lawrence Tech, I was working 3 jobs. I had 2 kids. One of them was diagnosed with epilepsy, so I had that to deal with. And I, was trying to get straight A's so that I could keep getting money to go back the next semester to finish up my degree, which eventually happened. But, I was taking like 3 classes a semester while working 3 part-time jobs and taking care of my kids and everything else. You just have to make the time. It's just time management. It's like budgeting anything. And keep in mind, again, these stories were already written. It's not like I would go home after working 16 hours and write a novel. It was more time spent with the editing, going through and saying, okay, well, I wrote these when I was 17. Maybe I can go through and fine tune them, because it's 20 years later now. So obviously I want to make some changes. But that's also what self-publishing allowed me to do.
I could only imagine what it'll be. Well, actually, I've done it. I've gone back to some of my high school writings and rewrite them. But if I went back to my middle school writings, it'd just be so horrible. My high school writings were bad enough. I'm like, how the heck did this ever get published? Those hacks over there. And they were absolute hacks.
It's bad to you now.
But they published me, which was a hack. But I can only imagine, look back at my middle school ones, like, wow, I really didn't know how to write a sex scene, but this is really funny.
And there are things like that pop up. There are ways the characters speak. When I was writing these back when I was like 16, 17, when I wrote Our Last Nights on Earth, I was like, this is how characters talk, because my experience was Michael Bay's Armageddon, Independence Day,
So you weren't really looking at a director that's known for writing.
No, not at all. These were just films that I watched that were popular at the time that really inspired the story. And you look at your work now, and when you're in your 30s or whatever, and yeah, it's going to suck now because you're a 35-year-old, 38-year-old, whatever, looking back at what you did when you were 15. But when you were 15, you liked writing this stuff. I like
Yeah,
writing
when
this
I was
stuff.
15, I knew it was hack work, but no one else was doing it, so why not?
Look at
And I
these-
still look at that. I still make hack work, but you know what? No one else is doing it. Why not? There's not another you out there, so someone's got to do it.
Look at the guy who writes like Captain Underpants, and there's like 50 million of those books, and
Yep.
all those kinds of there's all kinds of like spin-offs. I think the same guy does all those, but he's got to be a full-grown adult. You know, he's not a teenager. You know, but you know he writes stories like that, and it's fun to kind of look back and see what you've done and see, you know, yeah, this is bad, but I'm wondering. I mean, even movies when they're bad, sometimes you just like to look at them and laugh at how bad they are. And I'm not saying my books are bad. I think they have an audience. I think, you know, these are written for young teens to, you know, young adults, 15 to 18
See,
years
and
old.
if you had a pocketbook, they could put in their pockets because they don't have Jinkos anymore. Well, I got Jinkos, but they don't.
They won't even know what Jinkos are.
And let's say one of the people that keep writing me wanted me to show off my Jinko collection or just stand up. And yes, I am wearing Jinkos today. Hi, guys. Because I know if I mention you, you're going to watch more. And no, I'm not standing up. Like, what pants is he wearing? Can he stand up and turn around? No, get down. Get down.
Just blue jeans. That's it. I don't know what to call them.
That doesn't answer their question.
Oh. The cheap Walmart brand for $10.
Oh, man. Wait, so you said your background is in writing, then you went to school for film, and so you're getting these books out, but they're from when you're a 15, 16-year-old, which is before you started your background as writing.
My background in writing started when I was 9.
Okay, all right. I thought
And-
you're pushing towards like some sort of formal training or some sort of a job.
No. When I say background, it was just that's what I would have gone into had I not pursued film. And, you know,
And they go hand in hand.
well, it's like what Stephen King says. He says, you know, they're apples and oranges. They're both delicious. That's how he says it. I love when he says that. But they're very different mediums.
Yeah, but he can't direct either.
No. But he knows, I mean, you know, there's crap being made out of his books all the time. He makes...
And that's what he says. Even if they're good movies, he still says they're crap.
Yeah. You know, it just because you're a great author, you know, J.K. Rowling writes great novels. She can't write a screenplay to save her life. But yeah, I started writing when I was about 9 years old, and I envisioned myself being a novelist. Very much, that's how Lucas started. Lucas wanted to be a novelist. It's just, you know, and science fiction was what really got me into filmmaking. Star Wars, which has got a lot of people into filmmaking. I just knew that whenever I decide to bunker down and get financing to make a feature film, it's probably not going to be a science fiction film. That's just fair to say.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be something low budget that I can shoot in my backyard with some friends, and we'll just see how it does, you know, and hopefully it's written cleverly enough. That's why I went back to writing. There was a frustration with the filmmaking. It's been a couple of years since I've actually worked on anything. It was finding the time. It was finding a cast, because the friends I hang out with, we used to all the time take my video camera and go running around like at 11 o'clock at night in our like local parking lots or whatever and film stupid stuff. It was just all improvised. We loved doing that. But the minute I was like, hey, I have this idea, I'm going to write the script, let's come back together and shoot it, they weren't into that. My friends aren't into real filmmaking.
What's a script, man? We're going to be professionals now, man. That's work.
It is work. I mean, the only thing I ever really shot professionally on real 16 millimeter film was not fun. It was work. So yeah, filmmaking is a lot of work. It's just
And that was before you learned that you can't use any song you want to use.
exactly.
I've seen that filmed.
Yeah.
As fun as it is, I'm pretty sure it would be really hard for you to get the copyrights of Johnny Cash and whatever other artists are on it for a very low budget film festival.
Yeah. And that's just it. When you're making a film also, most of the time it costs money. I shot a 10-minute film that cost $500.
Oh man.
It's just insane how you're basically, when you're shooting a film, you know this.
Yeah.
If you have any kind of budget and you're not using your own money, you're approaching investors, family, whatever, you're basically saying, hey, I've got this great idea. I want to really express myself, but I need you to give me like $10,000 and you'll probably never make that money back. It's a very expensive trade, and there's so much that goes into it. Whereas when you're writing a book, short story, comic book, once you're done with the writing, that's your product. That's it.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't like. Even a lot of YouTubers or people getting to film are like, well, my friends and I will just do it for free, and then once we start making money, then we'll split it. You still don't understand at that point how much money you're still putting in it. Adobe charges a subscription fee. You're already paying money out of your pocket for that. Websites cost money more than just a Facebook page. You need an actual website to get an IMDb. You need, everything costs a little bit, and people forget how much their time costs.
Exactly.
I do this podcast every week. I devote X amount of time I could be spending doing freelance work, or which I would make way more money off of that. So that's where people totally understandable. And it is a passion project. Well, a passion project. Why am I saying that weird? A passion project doesn't put food on the table.
No.
Usually, you're very lucky when it does, and that's why people are very happy when they make it, and then they get weird, like, oh, that Luke guy you were talking about.
But I even announced when I got my first check from Amazon, they send you a check like 2 months later. It was for $9, and I was so happy because even though it didn't put bread on the table necessarily, it was like I got paid for writing. I mean, these didn't cost me anything because, again, Amazon, some places do charge. There are companies that'll charge you a minimal fee just to get your book out there. Amazon doesn't. Now, I think the reason they don't is because, A, they make so much money anyway, and they're trying to, they make some kind of money regardless of what you put out there.
Yeah, when you put up a lot of automated systems, it's just cheaper on their end.
Yeah. And there's, like I said, there's not a lot of choices with how your dimensions and your cover if you're not going to go with a professional artist. But it's not paying the bills necessarily, but I still get little checks every month from what I've sold. What I would hope with these books, I do know that a lot of people are buying them who are family members, and they just want me to sign a copy just to say I know a published writer. Yeah. But I'm pushing them, please read them, leave reviews, even if they're not good reviews, let people know what you think.
A bad review can still sell books. I know. I reviewed books on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/ToadenK. I've reviewed books on there. I've left some bad reviews. What happened after I left bad reviews? The publishing company asked me if I would join the Reviewers Guild because apparently I sold X amount of books that they liked. I thought it was a horrible review, but then again, why would a 30-something-year-old man be reviewing books intended for 14-year-old girls? Well, because I got them for free under a guarantee that I'll review them. I was bored. I was curious. I wanted to try something. It was very interesting, and if I got paid doing that, maybe I'll do it again. But then again, how do you put a price tag on an aneurysm?
And I will say, I think there's something to be said. This is a standalone book, but I do have 4 novellas out there that are part of a series. There's 4 of them. And Amazon allows you to run a promotion every 90 days where you can sell your ebook for free for how many days. So I did that. I just did a full, you can either do it for, I think you have 5 days total. So I just did one whole week where they were free. And for that whole week, people were downloading them like crazy. I don't know if they were reading them because they weren't posting reviews, but for like the first couple of days I did that, they were each like in the top like 50 of like downloaded free books.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and then the next day, of course the sale, the sale was off and they dropped. Right. But that's also, this one I can kind of understand. It's 380 pages. It's a novel. Novels take time, but a short story, that's 60 pages. My brother bought all of them and he read them, within an hour or two, and he was able to tell me, this is what he thought. He described the first one, The Last Jedi, which didn't make me feel very good.
Needed more Muppets.
Yeah. He was like, he read Galactic Redemption was the very first one, and he's like, how all the negative parts of Last Jedi, that's what this book reminded me of. And I'm like, he's like, hey, I'm telling you that your book is as good as, the $200 million Star Wars movie. I'm like, that's not saying much.
No.
He was joking with me. But it's something that I really think, that age group, 15 to 18-year-olds would get a kick out of because it's a little cheesy. The Galactic Redemption book, it's definitely a knockoff of Star Wars, but it's still a lot of fun. I mean, there's a lot of WTF moments in it. He was criticizing that scenes tend to jump around quite a bit. But that's kind of the fun of it, and you learn as you go. And hopefully, if I write 5 more books, by the time you get to that 10th one, it'll be so good that maybe a publisher. Because what really got me into it was, I think the guy's name is Andy Weir, the guy who wrote The Martian. He self-published that, and the publisher, some publisher, whoever ended up publishing it mainstream, saw it, liked it, and they published it, and that got made into a movie. And it was my favorite movie of 2015.
Yeah, it was a great movie.
And then the guy who wrote Aragon. I can't think of his name, but he was like 16 when he wrote that. And the same thing, he's self-published, and he made, like 4 books, and that became a movie as well. So you just got to get it into the right hands.
Okay, couple questions. First one is, have you thought about doing an audiobook version of any of these things? I know it's a lot of time in audio, and even if you're doing it yourself, it's very frustrating, and you lose your voice and your mind. But we already lost our mind, so that's okay.
Well, that's where the editing comes in. You don't do it all in one day, even the short one. I did contemplate. I was very serious. I even started with Galactic Redemption, the first one. I started recording it, and it was just so funny to listen to it because I was trying to do it seriously, but you listen to it and you're like, no one's going to take this seriously. But what I did was I put a poll online. You were part of it, and I just asked, how would you prefer your written media? Comic books made sense. You always want the physical media of that. I've read ebooks for comics, and I don't like doing that either. But the audiobook, surprisingly, was the least popular choice. And
I love my audiobooks, but they have to be done decently well.
Yeah.
It's very hard to have a good audiobook of Virginia Woolf and not fall asleep. Now, if someone has an audiobook of Virginia Woolf where they think's amazingly done, go ahead, send me a clip. I'll give you credit if it is amazingly done. I've tried to listen to audiobooks by Virginia Woolf, and I thought every one of them was terrible. Then again, I fall asleep while reading the book, so go figure.
And people who know me say I have an annoying voice anyway, so whatever. But
yeah.
It was one of those things where there are professional websites and things where you can hire actors, and relatively, they can be affordable. But even then, if you're hiring an actor for, let's say, $400 a session or whatever, I just said, that makes sense if your book has really sold quite a bit. If you're Harry Potter, if you're a Stephen King book, you're already selling the book. So that makes Game of Thrones. I know the audiobooks for those are insanely popular, but a book that you're just putting out there to experiment with. And when I found out that most people would rather have a physical copy anyway, it's something that I would definitely like to explore. And I actually have done in the past. I have done smaller books that I haven't published, but I did just do audio reads of them because I didn't think they would ever get published. And they're funny to listen to, but yeah, not something I would pursue quite just yet.
Yeah, I looked at doing it just for fun. I looked at a few, what do they call it? Public domain books.
Yeah.
And just for fun, I just started reading without pre-reading it, by the way. I was like, I'm going to read books that are horrible. Start with Virginia Woolf. That's why I pick on her. And it just, again, I almost fell asleep on the microphone. And I realized that and I Googled this and I heard other people did do it. Just reading books without pre-reading, it's so funny. I don't know if there's a market for it, but I know there's people that do that. It is so absolutely hysterical sometimes.
When you listen to an audiobook too.
Yeah, when you listen to an audiobook, if you're actually doing a real audiobook, there's so many different styles. My favorite are the ones where they almost rewrite the book into a screenplay and perform the pieces. I'm nowhere near that good. However, the first books of an artist, an author, same thing, I guess. The author usually reads it either seriously or tries to have a little bit fun with it, and until they're popular, and then they could hire someone else to do it. My favorite books, my favorite audiobooks by Chuck Palahniuk, the guy who wrote Fight Club. Although Fight Club was extremely popular and he got someone else to read it, which was very good. He himself still ended up voicing over books that were still very extremely popular, but not that high up, like Survivor and Choke. But then again, Chuck Palahniuk is still a very good reader, although he doesn't have a million characters like other voice actors do.
And I think with me too, when the audiobooks that I traditionally listen to, unless the narrator has some kind of an accent that makes it a little like the Forrest Gump books. I don't know if Winston Groom reads those, but whoever reads those reads it with the Forrest Gump Southern accent. So those are actually a little easier to listen to. But if you really listen to how professionals do it, it's almost like they're professional speakers. They're very articulate with how they read. It's not the same thing as like your parents reading you a book. I mean, it's very articulate how they
sometimes, but the more
ones I
popular
listen
ones,
to.
yeah, the higher paid, better ones are not.
Okay.
Then again, I've also heard books read by actors, and I'm very glad they have direction.
Yeah, those would be kind of fun.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now. I lost count how many voice actors on it. It's an anthology, and every chapter has at least one different voice actor on it. And boy, was I blown away when Adrian Paul started reading from the Highlander TV series. For those that don't know who Adrian Paul is, with a really heavy accent.
He played not Connor McLeod, but the
Duncan MacLeod.
Duncan MacLeod. For some reason, you said Adrian Paul. I'm thinking of the guy from Breaking Bad. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Oh man, what's his
Jesse
name?
Pinkman.
That's it.
I thought you were talking about him for a minute. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Felicia Day's also in the same series though too, but she was really good at reading. I'm talking about Wild Cards. If anyone's curious, who George R. Martin series before Game of Thrones. Although even though he wrote stories, he mostly edited. He was also an editor because they're anthologies, so they're written by a bunch of other writers too, which is amazing. And hopefully they'll make a series or a series of movies out of. There's talks about it like every year or two, every couple of years. And there's also made comic books, which is how I learned of the series.
Yeah.
Anyways, so the other question I have, because we're talking about ways to marketing, have you brought it to any shows?
No, I would love to. It's just, again, a matter of time and finding people that can kind of get me in. I've got a cousin.
It's not that hard to get into shows, my friend.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. I'm just saying that. I've been to a million of them. It's not that hard to get into shows.
Right. And for you, it wouldn't be because you go to a million of them. I've been to 2 comic conventions in my entire life. So I love comics and nerdy, geeky stuff. I just never have the time and the finances to go. I went to Motor City Comic Con, and this was like 3 years ago. Amy Jo Johnson was there. She was the only person I really wanted to see because I don't go to these things, so I don't get to meet a lot of celebrities. So it was novel for me. And I went, and I think I spent like the whole time I was there like $150, and I didn't bring any souvenirs home.
Yeah, and that's because you went to Motor City Comic Con, where they charge like $20-$30 just for parking, and then your ticket's $50 versus a local show, or even a smaller local show, like let's say Monroe Pop Fest, where Amy Jo Johnson and a bunch of other Power Rangers were at, where it's only $15 to go in and parking is free.
Yeah.
Or you go to an even smaller show like
I went to Midwest Media Expo, and I went to
smaller show. We're talking about small show. Midwest Media Expo is that show. I'm sure it's fantastic. It's Humacon Junior. That show was supposed to be like a YouTube type thing, but because the organizers really only know how to do Humacon, somehow it broke down to a Humacon Junior. That's why it's no longer held at the TCF Center, formerly known as Kobo, and they take that somewhere else, or else it's just the same Humacon people, but less of. There's a bunch of smaller shows, even Black Age of Comics, Motor City Black Age of Comics. Black Age of Comics is a wider franchise, but Motor City Black Age of Comics, Downriver Comic Con. There's like 3 or 4 shows a month easily, especially in the summer months. There's sometimes 4 Comic Cons a weekend. Every single one of them is less than $10. There's fantastic ones. And there's a lot of different ways to get out there. Not saying you're going to make table back, but
no.
There's some that it doesn't cost so much, and you can at least have fun and network and get to know more people if you have the time.
Yeah.
And also it is fun for, you bring your kids there and depending what's going on and do that. You see vendors' kids running around and having fun or hiding underneath the table playing Game Boy, whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just a suggestion. And I personally
absolutely.
suggest thinking outside the box because I know I've thought about different things to sell and not just going to Comic-Cons. That's like when I was doing more YouTube stuff. I'd go to YouTube conventions. What's the point? Everyone there is selling a similar product.
Right.
I go to a Comic-Con. Yeah, there's other especially now there's a million podcasters, but when I first started, there wasn't that many YouTubers. And then I would go to a IT show. There's no one all the filmmakers and podcasters are all on the IT stuff. I might not get, so the amount of impressions I make is greater because I'm someone different. I go to a craft show. Oh, I have fun at craft shows. And I do find more and more of course, artists, but authors at craft shows, usually if they're selling kids' books, they'll go to craft shows now, especially mommy books. They tend to go. They tend to do decent at craft shows. It's interesting. You gotta try different things. I know Dave Hernan that's been on the show. Now what he sells are mostly toys or whatever kind of popular at the time. So he could tell you dynamics at farmer markets, craft shows, Comic-Cons, car shows. Oh, he does great at car shows. I don't know if a sci-fi book could do great at car shows.
Yeah.
But then again, you never know.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. I've been marketing the book as a science fiction book, and that's a funny word, science fiction, because there are so many.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, there's so many different versions. What is science fiction?
Are we talking about space cowboys out west? Space cowboys in space? Are we talking about space stuff? Are we talking about mutants? What's the sci-fi portion? Are we talking about a normal story that happens to have time travel? What do you mean? Is it a coming of age space thing where all of a sudden it's I don't know where I'm going with this anymore.
I remember going into Blockbuster Video years back and Back to the Future. Sometimes it'd be in comedy, sometimes it would be in science fiction. But that's the thing. It's such a niche genre. There are people who might have an interest in action adventure, but you tell them science fiction and they might go, that's 2001 Space Odyssey. No thanks. So that's the other thing too is just I'm not a marketing guy. I'm a creative. And a lot of times, as I'm sure you know, they don't always gel. That's why a lot of these companies have marketing companies behind them, which is something I would love to have. But that's kind of what I knew I was getting into.
Creatives don't really know where to turn. That's why they try a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I know I've tried a little bit of marketing and where I realized marketing is way different, but I have fun studying and researching marketing. I love having people that do marketing on the show. I need more. I think that's a call to action.
There you go.
I love I love the aspect of marketing. I love the aspect of storytelling. I love the aspect of what goes behind promotions. Not necessarily trying to steal people's money, but what the thought process goes behind. Especially when you see horrible promotion techniques. That's when you really like, wow. I'm really glad I met you. I learned so much from promotions. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Oh, I didn't say I enjoyed it. That was my favorite part of telling teachers that I really liked them. And they're like, oh, I'm glad you enjoyed your class. Like, I didn't say that. I just said I learned a lot. I didn't tell you what I learned. I learned what not to do.
Yeah, I had a couple of marketing courses. One that I remember specifically was creative entrepreneurship at Lawrence Tech. It's one of the last classes I took. And it was basically being your own boss, but finding creative ways to go about marketing whatever your business was. And I decided to do a feature film because feature films, again, any feature film when you're an independent, it's a niche thing. You got to kind of find the right people who are interested in financing in that anyway. And what I tried to do, I wanted to do a science fiction independent film for around $750,000. So it'd be like a sci-fi movie kind of deal. And what I tried doing was I took characters from the screenplay, like alien characters, and there was the human characters, different ones, and I created a Facebook account for each of them. And then I started randomly messaging people and I tried to get them to interact with the characters, and it didn't go so well because I got the characters.
Because you became a stalker.
Exactly. And I had friends of mine going, yeah, there's this weird gargoyle thing. He says he knows you and he's messaging me on Facebook. Should I accept his friend request or what's going on? And I would have to then tell them I'm doing a marketing thing.
In on the joke.
Yeah, and it didn't. That was a terrible marketing technique. But you'll learn. It could have gone either way. It could have gone viral. But
Right.
yeah, it's when you're one person who's doing everything. A lot of the times it just falls apart because you're too close to the material. So I've been for this month in October. Actually, the other thing I've been kind of doing is doing horror movie reviews, which I love to do.
You do that every October.
I try to do every October. I used to do 31 every October, but with the editing and the writing, I would have to do those like 6 months in advance. So now they're very impromptu, but I typically tend to sneak in a little art commercial for the book, at the end of each one, just to remind people that it's still out there. My It one recently, I was trashing it while comparing it to my book. Not that I'm saying that I'm a better writer than Stephen King by any means,
Right.
But you just got to do whatever you can to try and get it into people's consciousness. And it's a fun book. There's a lot of fun alien characters and creatures. It's not a very hard read at all. If you like those kinds of 90s, Michael Bay films like, Armageddon, or if you liked, any of the Roland Emmerich films, Godzilla, Independence Day, Fifth Element, it's got some Terminator in there. It's got all kinds of different sci-fi stuff kind of mushed into one big action adventure fantasy book. This is the Michael Bay of novels. And I think
That you're not giving it any credit, man.
Well,
Michael Bay's not a writer, or at least not a good writer. I don't know.
No, but
I mean, he was good enough to make Milk Money.
but he makes entertaining films for 15-year-olds.
Milk
That's-
Money.
Yeah, and that's kind of
I was
the
hoping
audience.
to leave the pun there, but
Well, are you talking about the film Milk Money?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm not even saying Michael Bay is a great filmmaker, but I am saying that there is some fun to be had with his films. And of course, I wrote, it took me 4 years to write this. I wrote it in loose leaf notebooks and then I published it years later, but it's gone through many revisions and I just had a fun time writing it. And I think the biggest kind of disservice to the book is it really should be a graphic novel. It reads very much like a graphic novel to the point where sometimes it'll actually say, meanwhile, ... like literally, sometimes it'll do stuff like that, but I just can't draw. I'm not that kind of an artist. So I went back to what I knew and I wrote it as a novel. And, hopefully.
And that's fine. I've read X-Men novels. In fact, I prefer X-Men novels to X-Men graphic novels because graphic novels often tie into a million other things, or it becomes a thing where it doesn't sit on its own. Meanwhile, a novel will sit on its own, and so what? You don't have the pretty pictures. You also have a fuller story in one take.
And I something like this, I set out. I didn't write this to make $1 million or anything like that. It was a passion project.
If I had $1 million.
Shut up. It was a story that I really wanted to tell, and that I tried very hard to tell through the years. So to see it in a published format, and tell people it's out there, you can buy it. And I don't know if anyone's bought this one yet. One person I think has bought it so far. But the Galactic Redemption stories for sure have sold, and it's just cool to be like, I'm writing, I'm publishing, I'm self-publishing, I'm doing whatever I can to market it, and I'm making just a little bit of money out of it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It is. I mean, you could say just like, all the creatives are like, hey, at least I made something, and I feel like that's the kind of society we're in now. When I was in high school, if you publish a novel, that was a big deal. Even if it wasn't the greatest, whatever, you did it. Today, people are taking the initiative and doing that more and more. And it's still something. I mean, I'm not trying to discredit just because more people are doing it. It's great. I think it's a great thing. And we just got to figure out ways to market it more. And we need to take time people just need to take more time to themselves and read more and not work 15 hours doing many different things. Wow. Look at the time. I got to go work another thing. You know what? what's something about your books that you wish someone would ask you?
Something. Wow. I don't know. I like talking about myself a lot, and I like talking about the inspirations for, where you came up with certain ideas.
Yeah, you say Michael Bay so many times, I think you have a man crush on him.
No, quite the opposite, actually. I'm not the biggest Michael Bay fan, but I have said many times that I wrote these when I was 15, 16, 17 in high school. Roland Emmerich and Michael Bay, those are the movies that were making serious bank, and those were the movies that were popular. I'm not saying that those movies held up against time, not at all.
All the movies I really liked growing up either are now considered cult classics or considered, even though if they were popular, people still know what they are, they're considered, besides broken like I just broke my pen, they're considered broken like I just broke my pen or forgot.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll pick up that piece of the pen before I forget it.
And I'm not saying that I copied any one of those movies or I copied Michael Bay. I'm just saying this book especially has a lot of dogfighting, a lot of action, a lot of explosions, things you don't typically associate with novels.
Right.
But there's still, the inspiration is still there. There's so many different characters and so many different alien species, and there's a lot of different things going on. It is a self-contained story, but again, going back to those big 90s films, they had a lot of characters, which this has too. And it was just fun to do all of that and to just say, I don't need to worry about where am I going to get the money to produce this, because I'm just writing a novel. That's all it is. And I'll put it out there, and hopefully people have fun with it.
Now, I always liked reading people's description of aliens they've created, because it's hard to have a picture of an alien in your mind reading a book because you don't know what the author intended it or tentacled it, because a lot of aliens have tentacles. Why not? It's fun. You kind of create your own picture when you're reading a book, and it almost seems like too much detail. Well, I guess that's each their own. Some people like a lot of detail. Some people like just enough to make that alien race, its own thing. How do you write it? Do you go super into detail, or like what makes an alien to the reader besides just saying, "Oh yeah, it's an alien"?
Well, when you're dealing especially with, I think there are 4 main alien races, plus the main characters in the book are humans. I describe basically their clothing, what they look like to a degree, and sometimes I go into a lot of detail with, the texture of their skin, how tall they are, how they, how one character might look compared to other members of the same species. You got to realize that aliens come from different planets, so you got to think about what kind of environments do these creatures come from, and how are they so much different from this race. And what I really like to play around with was the theme of all of these stories are basically, they're all wars between aliens and human civilizations, and the aliens are always trying to one up the
puny humans. Just kill them all,
right?
Freaking Terrans.
And but the main aliens in the book, the main villains are the cycloids. Those are the big bad ones. They're like 8 feet tall. They're basically gremlins, like from the movie Gremlins, but like 8 feet tall. But they do human things. They wear business suits. They smoke cigars. They have very human characteristics, but they think they're better than the humans because of the technology. And
they are, because, well, puny humans.
But I kind of like that about those creatures. And a lot of the aliens in that book are going around wearing, business suits, with the briefcases and the tidy ties and the cigars and the things we see American businessmen do all the time. And that's kind of a hidden message in the book, is big corporations versus the little people. Lloyd Kaufman could tell you all about that.
See, I would want to do something silly. I think I would end up, like, if I had a world where I wouldn't be judged, I'd be like, okay, this alien race covers everything up except for their genitals, because it's a thing of pride. Wow, I don't think they would allow me to make a movie about that. Well, it wouldn't be about that at all. It'll just be on screen, not even mentioning it. Well, maybe a little bit about the Unmentionables.
Now I'm jealous. Now I got to put that in my book.
They're seen as hippies, but they make a lot of money.
You just reminded me of the alien from Star Trek 6, where his genitals are actually on his knee, and that's the one part of his body that's exposed. Kirk kicks him in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about having a third leg. Man.
Yeah. And surprisingly, the one thing the book is missing, there's not a lot of sex. I don't think there's any sex scenes in the book. What was I thinking?
Because you didn't know how to write it yet. You were 16.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, maybe you did. I don't know. I don't need to know that.
A lot of stuff blowing up, lasers and spaceships and
Michael Bay,
flying
yeah.
bikes and stuff. There's speeder bikes. They're called swoops, which are basically stolen from Return of the Jedi.
Swoop.
Heat skimmers.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. I swear I only had one drink.
Yeah, you're not marketing my books.
So I get to say what I want.
Yeah, that is true. Very true.
All right, Lenny, go ahead and tell people where they can find you and where they can buy the books.
Amazon.com. Just type in Lenny Sherman in the search bar and you'll see all the books there. I do have a website. Can I look it up real quick? Because it's not a .com. It's like a Wix site kind of thing.
That's fine. You know, you mentioned Amazon.com. I always tell people if you're going to shop on Amazon, go to smile.amazon because to no cost at you can go ahead and the price of what you pay, sometimes we'll donate a little bit to charity and you could choose your own charity and no choice to you. It's like using an affiliate link, except for the affiliate in this case is a charity of your choice. So go to smile.amazon and then you could pick the charity of your choice. Here, my charity of choice is DV Farm. You can learn all about the DV Farm at dvfarm.org, which is, of course, part of the Dysfunctional Veterans whole thing. And by the time this comes out, let's hope Dysfunctional Veterans got their Facebook page back because apparently it got banned again. Go ahead, Lenny. Did you find it yet?
I'm looking for it. It's one of those things where it has a weird extension at the end because it's it's a free website. It's not coming up. lsherman9.wixsite.com/video portfolio. That's where all my
Say
videos.
that one more time in a beautiful package. You could find all my stuff at.
You can find all of my videos, not books, but video content at lsherman9.wixsite.com/video-portfolio.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why it's taking. But if you go to Amazon.com, look up Lenny Sherman. My books will show up there. Not the comedian Lenny Sherman, because that'll show up on YouTube quite a bit too, a British comedian. I have a Facebook page where I promote all of my videos, and I do have a YouTube channel. Just look up Lenny Sherman on YouTube. And I promote my books all the time. Our Last Nights on Earth, Galactic Redemption. Just search my name with those titles, and it'll show up on YouTube as well.
All right. And if you enjoyed this, thank you. If you think someone else would enjoy this, go ahead and share it to them. I'm not sure at this point if I have my Patreon up or not because, well, I'm filming this several weeks in advance. So hopefully I have my Patreon up. So you can go ahead and look up Toaden on Patreon. Maybe I'm there, maybe I'm not there. And I'll have some, like, the deleted scenes from this. Ooh, there's an uncut version. Like, there's an uncut version of all my stuff that I just haven't released yet. And, of course, you could find, if you share this with your friends, you can find Media Literature Sandwich on YouTube, on MediaLiteratureSandwich.com, on Toaden.com. Of course, Dysfunctional Veterans, you can hear it streaming every look at their schedule. Right now, it's every Tuesday. That might change by then. I don't know. So look at the DV radio schedule. And, of course, on almost every podcast app, including Spotify, iHeartRadio, who knows what else. But, you know, please comment. Let me know you're out there. Let me know what you think. Join a Facebook group. Wouldn't mind, preferably, maybe. I don't know. I got a couple out there. I even got one for, I forgot to press record support group.
Yes.
Because we needed a support group, I felt. And, of course, there's a Media Layer Sandwich group as well.
I feel like that happens to way too many people, so I really appreciate that group. I feel very much a part of that group.
Yeah, with all the shame involved.
Oh, yeah.
It's became my place to put down any type of media meme as well.
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed our discussion and may the algorithms be in your favor.
And buy my book, Our Last Nights on Earth, on sale for $14 at Amazon.com. Thank you.